Some of the most important players you can target in your drafts are wide receivers with high breakout upside. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. 6 wide receivers that you need to draft before they break out in fantasy football this year. And fellas, I think that people will notice a trend in this video is that none of the wide receivers that we talk about have actually played in the league for more than 3 years. Cameron, literally the first wide receiver you're going to talk about has only played in the NFL for 3 years, entering his 4th year. Jameson Williams, you said before we turned on the cameras, you've been creeping up on him. Go ahead, plead your case, because I'll let you start. Go ahead, Jameson Williams.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you see right away wide receiver 18. I have really come to appreciate who JMO is as a wide receiver. I think he's going to take another step forward. I just keep being brought back to the fact that this guy was, a Heisman candidate before he got hurt. And then obviously the start of his career was about as derailed as you possibly be. Some by his own doing with a gambling scandal, but coming off the ACL to start. So we can say he's been in the NFL for 3 years, but he's really only played 2 seasons. And last year he was wide receiver 20 in points per game. And yet only had 91 targets. I mean, it's like it was just crazy how much he did per target. He was 7th in fantasy points per target with 2.33. He made a lot of things happen. He had over 1,000 yards last season, which was, pretty crazy with only 58 receptions. So he did a lot with not nearly as much. Obviously, Sam Laporte only had 83 receptions as well. But if I'm looking at this offense and I have to pick between the two, Sam Laporte or Jameson Williams, who's going to continue to rise as the target getter, as the guy you're going to go to, I'm projecting it to be Jameson Williams. I think he's going to continue to score touchdowns. I think he's still going to continue to get big plays. A couple of things I was surprised about, digging into Jameson too a little bit more. He only had 13 deep targets last season. Those are targets 20 yards down the field, right? We think of him as this big play guy, but obviously a lot has to do with Ben Johnson. I'm not saying it doesn't, but he's dangerous after he gets the ball in his hands, right? Because he is so fast. I mean, those long strides, he just can run away from people. Only 11 red zone targets, which was 40th last year. He was 51st in target share. So all of those can continue to rise, and we can see the efficiency come back down, right? I'm not expecting him to continue at, 18 yards per reception, 17.3 yards per reception. But he's going to be a 14, 15 yard per reception guy. That's who Jameson Williams is. So I think we're going to maybe see a little bit of a balancing come out. But if he was already at wide receiver 20 in points per game last year, I feel like if the volume continues to grow, if he takes the step that I'm projecting, that wide receiver 18 really isn't that far out of the realm of possibilities.
And I kind of want to turn something that you mentioned on its head as well in like a positive way. Only 13 deep targets for Jameson Williams last year. Yeah. This offensive staff has come out and said that they want to throw more deep balls this year, right? That's why Isaac Tesla is climbing up in rankings. That's why Jameson Williams is a frequent target at the wide receiver 25 here. Now, I'm not as optimistic as you. I still have JMO at my wide receiver 30, but that's going to climb here as I'm making more and more tweaks as we get further into the preseason. We get more notes. We understand what schemes teams are actually going to be deploying this year. But Ty, you had mentioned also before we turn on the cameras, you might be on more of the skeptical side.
Well, that was partially because I didn't know exactly where the projection for Cam was going to come out to be. And wide receiver 18, to be fully transparent, the more that I heard and listened, the more I really kind of put together, like, this is in the range of outcomes for Jameson Williams, whether you want to admit it or not. This is in the range of outcomes. And there's the projection of more targets that can maybe get him into the top 20. But even if the volume is relatively the same as it was last year, the guy was wide receiver 23 in points per game. So it's not like we need a giant jump in volume for Jameson Williams to really be a productive player on your team and to return value. And you brought up the great point that this team will want to throw the ball more downfield. Jared Goff last year was 35th in air yards per attempt, and he was outside the top 20 in ADOT last year. So again, it only makes sense that Jameson Williams, on what was a very limited sample of deep balls, that should go up this year. So even more big plays with his speed and skill set. Again, the wide receiver 18 projection that Cam has, whether you like it or not, it's in the range of outcomes here.
Do we consider that a breakout for him this year, though, considering he was wide receiver 20 in points per game last year? Just sticking within the theme of the episode, right? Guys who are going to break out. I can understand a bullish projection, but when do we quantify it in your mind as a breakout, Cameron?
Yeah, I think he has room to grow off of that. I think that it's not out of the realm of possibilities that he leads the Lions in receiving yards and touchdowns. I think
there's a take.
Because Amon-Ra's still going to lead in targets, he's still going to lead in receptions. It's just the way that he was used last season, 11 yards per reception. If we do get that uptick from Jameson Williams this season, right? And I have that actually projected right, or no. So I have Amon-Ra slightly ahead than Jameson Williams, but still getting 25 more receptions than him.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have it close because I think if Jameson Williams is in that 14.5 to 15 yards per reception range, he can do that. I think, touchdowns obviously aren't a super sticky stat. If that falls Jameson Williams' way, I think we could see him creeping up, a Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle-esque season where he finishes between wide receiver 9 and 12 as the wide receiver 2 on one of the higher scoring offenses in the NFL. That's something I see for Jameson Williams. That's something I see happening. I think, wide receiver 18 is bullish, but I do see room for him to outperform even where I got him already.
Sure. Okay. And that's the point I wanted to get to is I think it's one thing to talk about the projection, but it's another to then say no. But I actually do think he can hit this top 15 wide receiver range where I think we could quantify that then as a breakout if he's sniffing the top 12 wide receivers. I think you hold the most optimism there. I'm still of the mindset of I'm still not convinced which piece is going to give on this Detroit Lions offense if we're expecting regression with Ben Johnson gone this year and how efficient they were as an offense last year. I'm trying to figure out where the give and take is and all of that. But I think the point you made still holds true is that Jameson Williams is definitely going to be the higher yards per reception player compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's definitely going to be the higher catch percentage player in comparison. We got a handful of more breakouts here, but before we do, we know you're prepping for your drafts. We want you along for the ride with us to help beat your league mates this year. So make sure you're following us. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well so you know when all of our newest content is out. As much as we want to bring you fun insights along the way, we hope we can have some fun, remind you of the camaraderie that comes with playing the game of fake football. It's how the three of us became friends. I'm sure that's how you build community with a bunch of your friends as well. So join us along for the ride with some of our insights to help you beat your friends, but also for the fun that we'll have too. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. New face on a new team this year, George Pickens, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver. This is one of my slowly becoming one of my favorite players to target in drafts this year.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part is that the price is slowly starting to go up now because more and more people are kind of realizing oh wow, George Pickens is actually in a really good situation here in Dallas. We've talked about the schematic fit here, right? With how he, the position of receiver that he plays compared to CeeDee Lamb in this situation with Dallas of no run game, not so great defense. So you got to throw the ball. I've even said before, it wouldn't surprise me if we see CeeDee Lamb get 170 or more targets and George Pickens gets 120, even 130 or more targets, because it is quite literally just those two guys. Now, the guy hasn't topped 110 targets in his career, so there is a pretty big jump, all things considered, and he hasn't been better than the wide receiver 35 in points per game. And honestly, why I'm so bullish now on George Pickens is because he has CeeDee Lamb to take attention away. When he was in Pittsburgh, he was the guy. And we've always known George Pickens to be a great route runner, to be a great man coverage beater. And that's the same player that's going into Dallas. But with the extra attention off of him, he can just focus on doing what he does well. And again, that's downfield, beating man coverage, and making some spectacular, outrageous catches. So I think the big question for George Pickens will be, well, what does the touchdowns look like? How many touchdowns does this Dallas offense score? Because that CeeDee is probably going to get 8 or 9 himself, if not more. So you got to think that Pickens can get 5 or 6. So there is a bit of this is a bit of a projection just again, because we haven't seen George Pickens do this, but I think he's really set up to really break out this year, not just from a fantasy production standpoint, but really from like the advanced metrics of usage in compared to all other receivers.
I just want pieces of this Dallas Cowboys passing attack. I want Dak Prescott. I want CeeDee Lamb.
I even want Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I'll take Jake Ferguson at value. Tight end 16. He goes off the board as right now. I'm totally good with that price tag. If you want to scoop him up in later rounds as well. This is just an offense that is playing, can't say behind a poor defense, but on the other side of the ball, the defense I don't think is going to do this offense any favors this year. This offense doesn't have a run game to establish either. I'm sorry. Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Jaden Blue don't cut it for me. And Brian Schottenheimer, again, I've like kind of brought it up sarcastically on previous episodes, but also the guy who let Russ cook for the first time, right? So I think when you get a healthy Dak back as well, it's tough to not just keep the ball in his hands and say, all right, Dak, go ahead. Piece this defense apart. We got you a wide receiver 2 to play alongside CeeDee Lamb now. Yeah, I could see George Pickens turning in a top 15 season. No problem, Cameron. I don't know where you stand.
Yeah, my biggest worry is when Brees Hall gets traded there in a couple weeks and is the RB.
Well, that's fair enough.
Dang it.
Honestly, all you can say about George Pickens is the only person stopping George Pickens is George Pickens. It's how consistent.
Keep your hands to yourself, son. Yeah, right.
It's how consistent can he be? Can he, is he going to be in the mental space of like playing? We just saw enough with Pittsburgh, and obviously, Mike Tomlin, we've seen has put up with quite a bit, especially when it comes to offensive weapons on his team, i.e., the Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell era. But it's when they decided to move off of him. We don't think he's that guy. Dallas picks him up. If he is going to kind of take that almost maturity step forward where I'm going to be consistent, I'm locked in every game, right? I'm not throwing hands in the middle of a game anymore, which I guess I can't talk too much about because the guy I picked, Jameson Williams, just got picked out of practice today because he was fighting. So, I mean, I guess it's a theme with every guy we're picking is you have to be in at least one fight. But obviously, it's just, the more consistent he can be, the better he's going to be on the field. And so he's got all the tools, he's got the talent, he's in the situation. I'm just a little more pessimistic that we're going to see that step forward from him. I think there's going to be flashy games, but that's why I currently have him as wide receiver 29 instead of up where Ty does at wide receiver 22.
Yeah, and I split you both in the middle right now. I'm sitting at 25, but that is also one where, again, you flip about 3 receptions Pickens' way, and all of a sudden you're looking at close to a top 20 wide receiver in my rankings as well. I'll talk about the best behaved player on this list, Tetairoa McMillan, mostly because he hasn't gotten himself in any trouble yet. Look, the alpha in the Carolina Panthers wide receiver room. You saw in his first game of preseason action, Bryce Young, beautiful sideline ball to him. And that's where Bryce actually typically thrives. Bryce is actually really good on these premeditated throws down the sideline where he takes one look, says, you know what, I got Tet there. He's got a step on him. I'm going to toss the ball up and let him go get one for me. And that's exactly what happened. As good as Jalen Coker has looked, as much hype as Xavier Legette has gotten out of camp, Adam Thielen will play a prevalent role, but you brought this guy in. You spent a first-round pick on him, a top 10 pick on him, when all the buzz was you were going to go defense to build out the defense. You got Bryce Young an alpha weapon. You have to utilize him. The stat I always keep coming back to, it's been referenced on the show probably 3 times at this point. Ron Stewart put it out. Since 2010, 21 first-round wide receivers have averaged, 21 wide receivers in general have averaged 16-plus fantasy points per game from week 9 on in their rookie seasons. Tetairoa McMillan is 1,000% that caliber of player. He's the alpha in this offense. I just don't see Jatavian Sanders, Jalen Coker, as much as I like Jalen Coker or Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen being a problem. For me, it's not a matter of if Tetairoa McMillan breaks out. It's a matter of when. You might just have to wait further in the season for that to happen. Do you two have any reservations about Tet?
Not really. I mean, I thought he was the most talented wide receiver coming out. I guess I think him and Travis Hunter, I think there's an argument both ways. Right. I think as far as fantasy this season, just because he's playing one position, I have him as my highest fantasy wide receiver. Dave Canales has shown, hey, I can produce an offense that's going to put up points, which gets you excited about Tet. it's going to be pretty clear, I think, pretty quickly that he's the one. It's just how much of a step is Bryce Young taking
Yes.
for this season. Again, he's a guy I'm not fully convinced takes another big step. I liked what we saw at the end of last season, but I'm not convinced that's what this year is. I still have Tet as a mid-20s wide receiver. Let me see where I have him at 25, so I actually have him ahead of you, Lucas.
Yep.
My concern is I just don't know how much higher he's going to go with Bryce Young. If Bryce Young does take that step, then yeah, I think he is going to be pushing top 12. I see the path for it, but he's kind of going to go as far as Bryce Young takes him.
And that's the thing you need to discern as well, because in drafts like Underdog, oh boy, the price is getting really rich at wide receiver 19. Where, you know, I would rather take a Jaden Daniels. I would rather take a George Kittle. I'm considering if I would rather take a Jalen Hurts there as well. That price is getting super rich because you're starting to bake in the guarantee of a back half breakout to that level. And I think what you have to decide is waiting 7 weeks, for that worth it for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I don't think it's a matter of if Tet McMillan breaks out. It's a matter of when he breaks out. Ty, where's he at in your rankings? Are you willing to take the plunge on him? I won't say in best ball contest, because in home leagues, he's still going in the 6th round. You can get him as your wide receiver 3 in home leagues. And that's the easiest bet in my life, to just take Tet McMillan in the 6th round, Roma Dunze in the 7th. We're totally in business at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. So I've got him at least right now, closer to where he's going to go in your home leagues. He's kind of around that like wide receiver 28 to wide receiver 30. And like Lucas said, at the end of the 6th round. And honestly, if I were to make a, positional or a ranking of all the skill positions, and then you weigh in some positional advantage and weight and all that kind of stuff, like Tet would be a lot higher, even though the projection may not be, as much as some of the guys that he would be ahead of.
Right.
And it is because I think the second half upside is unreal. But I also think we can really kind of put a picture on exactly when Tet McMillan is actually going to kind of break out. And I don't want to put too much stock into one play, but there was a play against the Browns. They're in the red zone. Tet is running a slant, and Bryce Young is like anticipating it, and it's a perfect ball.
Perfect.
And Tet drops it. I don't want that to be a like negative. If that connection clicks quicker than we think, it is to the moon for Tet McMillan, because that's not only are you going to get, again, the deep balls and the, contested catches on the sideline, like you pointed out, Lucas, but if we get some of those anticipation throws as well, like Tet is going to be alpha dude right out the gate. So Underdog a bit different, but in my home leagues, you best believe I am targeting Tet McMillan almost every single draft that I'm in, because the cost is so nice and I know what the upside is here.
Yeah, ADP of 39th overall over on Underdog. That is pinning him as the 3rd pick of the 4th round, basically. In your home leagues, you can get Tet McMillan basically the 3rd pick of the 6th round. So 2 full rounds later, Tet McMillan is going in your home leagues. That's what you need to know. That's what you need to be aware of. If you do want to try and draft some of these guys right now, get some reps in before your home league starts, while also competing against real people for real prizes, up to millions of dollars in prizes. Our friends over at Underdog have been hosting drafts all off season long. They got plenty running up to the start of the season. We'll take a break and hear from them. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, fellas, let's keep the train rolling, and let's get a little bit deeper down the board as well. We've talked about a handful of top 25 guys here. Let's dive outside of the top 30. Cameron, Slick Rick Pearsall is the next name you're going to bring up here. Good news that the 49ers did take him off the PUP list during training camp. It was a little bit of a concern originally when he and Ayuk went on at the same time, but he's back working with the 49ers now. Guy you want to target before he breaks out this year.
Yeah, and he might just break out by default. Juwan Jennings
seriously.
still isn't practicing. Brandon Ayuk, they're targeting week 6. We just talked about him in the last episode, so it's or 2 episodes ago, right? Was the last episode? I don't
2
remember.
episodes. Yep, 2 episodes.
We just
we're
talked
doing a lot
about
of recording right now.
And yeah, so he might just do it by default. And I know what you're probably thinking of. Well, okay, great. He's going to be the 3rd best option on this, San Francisco team. Well, let me remind you of 2023 when the same San Francisco team had Christian McCaffrey as running back 1 overall. George Kittle was the top 5 tight end. Brandon Ayuk was wide receiver 14, and Debo was wide receiver 12 in half PPR formats. So they've proven already, hey, we can handle, the full workload. We can handle all of it. And so if Ricky can continue to progress after what we saw last season, being the only guy really in camp, he's going to see targets because he has to. I mean, it like I said, it's by default. He is going to. They took him with a 1st-round pick, so they obviously believe in him. I think he's for sure a guy that we could see pushing this top 20 range this season, at wide receiver 40, especially the longer that Juwan Jennings is out, the longer that Brandon Ayuk is, takes to come back, it's only going to inflate his stock. And I just don't think we've quite caught up. Well, I guess he's actually, no, that's a lie. He's at wide receiver 34.
He is climbing.
So he is climbing up, but I think he still has room to improve off of that with the longer that these guys are out. And especially if, it's hard because you look at this offense and you go, well, there's really not that many targets to go around. But what Kyle Shanahan has shown is, hey, I have one of the most efficient offenses. The yards per reception for everybody is super high. We're scoring touchdowns at a high rate. Don't worry about how many targets you're going to get necessarily, because we'll make the rest of it kind of work from a fantasy perspective.
The only person getting in Ricky Pearsall's way is Ricky Pearsall.
Yes.
If he can stay healthy. If this hamstring doesn't linger into the season, doesn't bother him, then yeah, we could totally be in business, because Juwan Jennings, we don't know what the timetable is for his calf injury. Kyle Shanahan is kind of giving murky responses as to his level of confidence, and
that's so surprising.
When Juwan Jennings will be back, it's just it's giving me vibes of last season with Christian McCaffrey, right? Where it's well, we want to be cautious. He's dealt with it before, and he was out there when he was. It's just okay, but then McCaffrey wasn't out there last year, right?
What is with the calves in San Francisco? Why is that such a scary injury for everybody on the 49ers? It feels like every offseason it's somebody else with a calf injury.
That's a valid point. Granted, Juwan Jennings has been dealing with a calf injury for some time, but still, you're not wrong in that either. But no, the only person getting in Ricky Pearsall's way is Ricky Pearsall. And I think the other thing we need to take into consideration, Ty, is the landscape shift for this 49ers team. They actually lost a lot of pieces on defense. I think that's important because this might actually put the ball in the Brock Purdy's hands more often to be throwing the football, which Cameron, you talked about, there's not that many targets to go around. By default would then increase the amount of targets to go around if they need to throw to stay in more football games. I like Ricky Pearsall. He's one where I debate if I want to quote unquote chase injury, right? Where's the line there for me on chasing an injury? But someone in San Francisco has got to be the number 1 wide receiver outside of George Kittle, obviously. Look, why can't it be Rick, Ty?
Because he gets the Brandon Ayuk treatment because he
doghouse
Kyle Shanahan's. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like Kyle Shanahan has a pretty short temper when it comes to his receivers. But in all seriousness, Ricky is set up to be really the number 1 guy in terms of the receivers here. Juwan Jennings was the one that stepped up, but I have to think that he stepped up because Brandon Ayuk was hurt. Debo Samuel was just kind of a shell of himself. I don't think he was fully healthy, but they needed Juwan Jennings. Yeah, that's true. I did forget about that. But they needed Juwan Jennings to step up. This year, it's got to be Ricky. And the beauty about Ricky Pearsall is that he's not just a slot only guy, and it feels like that's the perception on Ricky, is that he's a slot only guy. He is not. Slick Rick can play almost any type of receiver position that you need him to. You need him on the X, you need him on a flanker or in the slot. He can do it all. And that is really going to be kind of another piece of this puzzle of this 49ers offense. Like, obviously Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, like we've mentioned, it's going to be Ricky. Again, the price on underdog has been going up because people are realizing that, maybe more so because he's healthy, but like Ricky is set up to really burst out in year 2.
Yeah. But that's also the thing. I'll let you get a word in here to close out, Cameron. But that's also the thing. I want to reemphasize over on underdog when we say these players are climbing. It's because, like you just heard, people are playing against each other in real time for millions of dollars in prizes. So they're trying to like get any edge they can before these prices climb up. In your home leagues, it's like, cool, we mock draft. Oh, hey, look, you can get Ricky Pearsall in the 8th round. I'm not going to bother reaching for him if I can just get him in the 8th round, right? It's a totally different dynamic. So that's why we like looking at these best ball markets, because they're more real-time indicators of how hot and cold people are on players. And clearly people are pretty hot and bothered. I shouldn't say hot and bothered by Ricky Pearsall. People are hot and bothered by Tetairoa McMillan and Travion Henderson right now. Things are just panning out towards Ricky Pearsall, and people are saying, well, I might as well get him before the price tops out.
Definitely. And I mean, it's just to sum up where I'm coming from on him is he didn't get shot this offseason. So that is a big step forward.
We're already making progress.
Keep in mind. Exactly. So go Rick.
Didn't he get his watch stolen? Andy got his watch back too.
Oh,
dude is that's
welcome to the NFL moment, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, welcome to the NFL, rookie. No, that's the kind of dog I want on my team, though. Let's talk about a rookie, though, Ty. Emeka Egbuka. People are hot and bothered by Emeka Egbuka. I remember when you could draft Emeka Egbuka at the start of the season as a wide receiver 51. I remember in your home leagues, which is literally yesterday, that you could draft Emeka Egbuka in basically like the 9th or 10th round of your home leagues. Over on Underdog, you basically got to make sure you're paying up in the 6th round to get Emeka Egbuka. 68th overall, he goes over on Underdog as the wide receiver 37, ahead of guys like Stephon Diggs, Jawan Jennings, right behind Chris Olave, Deebo Samuel. Warranted? Part of me says yes, but this is getting really steamy for me now.
I think what it ultimately comes down to is what your timeline is for Chris Godwin. Correct. As soon as you think Chris Godwin comes back, things do change here for Emeka Egbuka. But as things stand, it's still a question mark. Like, we can have Kyle Shanahan optimism for like he has for Brandon Ayuk. I still don't really buy that this team is going to be rushing Chris Godwin back into the mix. And maybe I'm drinking the Emeka Egbuka Kool-Aid too much right now. Everything throughout training camp has been Emeka Egbuka is that dude. So he steps in as this number 2 guy in Chris Godwin's absence. But let's just paint the picture. What if Mike Evans starts the decline this year? I know we've been saying that for the past, 3 years at this point. But if we see a decline in play from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's return is still, pushed back longer than we expect, Emeka Egbuka can emerge as like one of the best values because he's going to be targeted a ton in this Tampa offense. So maybe I get that the price for Emeka can get a little steep right now, just again, because the wide receiver room is in such a flux right now. But I'm just going to bet on the talent that is Emeka Egbuka, that he's going to win out. And on top of that, like, this team does want him to be kind of the outside inside receiver. And if that means he's going to be on the field more often, I'm all for it, because that's more opportunities then.
I was trying to find, there was a Todd Bowles quote recently that was basically providing an injury update on Chris Godwin. And I can't find it now, but it's just like the vibes around this Chris Godwin injury are just not great, Bob. They're pretty nasty. I don't even know how to interpret when Chris Godwin's timeline actually is.
Yeah, that's why I'm, last week I said he was a bad pick in the round that he was going in. And I'll admit, like Ty and I were talking about before, he's like, the reason I picked Emeka here is just to shove it back in your face and say, hey, you're wrong. And I do think, we're a week away, but we're a week away where we just have no news on Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
And if we are going to still continue to have no news on Chris Godwin, I mean, that is pro Emeka Egbuka news. And the dude has had nothing but high praises sung about him at camp. He's had nothing but, great clips. So I understand it. Again, I'm with you. I think it's a little high. My worry is when Godwin does come back, they're just going to kind of stick him in the slot because he's not going to be, able to win on the outside, which could hurt Egbuka. So that's where a little bit of pessimism comes from.
Which I can understand from that perspective, but man, if Godwin, probably I'm going to assume he's not ready for week 1.
No, he can't.
How long does that linger in? How long does it linger into the season though? Like that's the question you have to start asking yourself, because could Emeka Egbuka actually hit the ground running, playing as a 2 alongside Mike Evans in a pass favorable Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense with Baker Mayfield at the helm? Again, another offense we expect to see some regression for with Liam Cohen going to Jacksonville. But when you spend, I don't want to call it a luxury first round pick on Emeka Egbuka. It felt like Tampa had other holes they could have filled outside of taking Emeka, but it felt like a luxury pick in their minds to some extent of, wow, we can get Emeka Egbuka at this point in the first round to add to our wide receiver room. At some point, you also have to wonder, like, hey, were they actually pretty pessimistic on Chris Godwin? They're just staying kind of tight-lipped and murky on it. And they took Emeka Egbuka with the intention of, hey, at least we got someone uber talented out there, so we're not forced to play Jalen McMillan, who, fine football player. That's not a dig at Jalen McMillan, but Jalen McMillan is no Emeka Egbuka in my eyes. Before we dive on into our last player here, though, fellas, if you do want to see where we have all these players projected, fully statted out for the 2025 fantasy football season, you can get that in our 2025 draft guide. Full statted out projections on over 290 players, full team pages and profiles with fun stats and tidbits that have gone into our research, individual rankings for each of the players that we have statted out, offensive systems, record from last year, tendencies, everything of the sort. A lot in there for you all to digest. Got a video archive coming soon. I promise. I keep saying coming soon. I promise. It is coming. We're in the final works of piecing it together for you all. Fellasdraftguide.com if you want to get your hands on that. Link in the description, link in the pinned comment as well if you want to get your hands on that. To close this out, I'm going to try and keep it short. I can't shut up about Travis Hunter on this show. We've talked about him enough. I think the only player we've probably talked about more on this show is Rome Odunze. And we literally just talked about Rome Odunze
it's the only reason he's not on this show.
It's the only reason he's not on this show. It's because we literally just talked about him, and all I've done is talk about Rome Odunze this offseason, sir. Travis Hunter wins second prize. And I think the reason why I do want to make sure we talk about him on this show is that we get a chance to kind of debrief and digest the preseason action we did see this past weekend, where he was on the field, primarily majoring in offense, taking team reps with the first team, 11 of 12 snaps, I believe it was. And he was still playing with the second team defense. So I think that is notable. The other thing I want to make note of is that 62.5% of his snaps came in the slot in that game. I've been saying since he was going to come in, since he was drafted to Jacksonville, the formula here I think is pretty simple. Is Liam Cohen likes to run 3 wide receiver sets at the primary base personnel he's running out of. Travis Hunter's going to be out there, and he's going to get him wide freaking open in space because Travis Hunter just moves differently than the majority of other NFL wide receivers. So for me, it's just like, I've said it before. I just want to bet on this guy being phenomenal. And I'm okay being wrong if I'm betting on a generationally unique talent being wrong. It feels wrong for me to bet on him being bad, knowing the athleticism and the unique generational talent that he provides. It feels weird to just bet the opposite direction. I know you two have your own stances. You're not as bullish as I am, but Travis Hunter is a guy who's slowly coming up in my projections. Eventually, he's probably going to end up cracking, coming close to getting into my top 30 at some point. He's going wide receiver 31 right now. He'll probably crack my top 30 pretty soon, but I'll maybe let you two chime in. How are you digesting the action we saw from Travis Hunter this past weekend?
Yeah, it's given me a lot more optimism around Travis Hunter. It feels like he's for sure going to play at least 70% of snaps of offensive snaps this season, and he's going to be more mixed in sparingly on the defensive side. which, we kind of thought, but now we're really getting the confirmation about it. I'm a little bit pessimistic. There's a reason I don't have him quite where Tet is, and that's just, I think when you're practicing and you're going through all this in camp and you're focusing on both sides, you're just not putting that same attention on the offensive side as a Tet would get to every single practice. Now, like you said, he's extremely talented. I think he still has the ability to do so. I also have him as wide receiver 35. I just don't see quite the same upside this year. I don't know. And that might be because I'm just so unbelievably bullish on Brian Thomas Jr. as well, that it's just like, I just
can't
think
siphon anything from him.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I do recognize at the same time that they really like De'Ami Brown. I'm not exactly expecting him to take a huge target share. I'm not expecting Brenton Strange to take a huge target share. So there is a path. I'm just a little worried about the split, the time splitting, how that looks rookie year. I think moving forward, I think he's phenomenal. There's a reason, like in all of our dynasty drafts, Travis Hunter was the guy I took. I took him over Tet twice in dynasty drafts because I do believe moving forward, I'm just worried about how quickly he's going to start as the, all in kind of guy that you can trust week in, week out.
And I think it's also worth noting that that's kind of been the approach the Jaguars have had during training camp as well. They've kind of been splitting his reps in a few different directions as well, where, one day it will be primarily offense, the next day it'll be primarily defense. And we have seen that a little bit. So you do wonder if you're going to get that in the second preseason game, if he comes out and you do get more on the defensive side of the ball rather than the offensive side. But again, Ty, I do think it's, again, I'm not putting all the stock in the world into this because I'm not a goof and just putting all of my stock into preseason depth charts, but he is listed with the first team offense, but still listed with the second team defense. Room for that to change, obviously, but it's another piece of the puzzle I'm at least willing to try and put together.
Yeah, totally. I think if you're going to nitpick or you're going to try to point out the downside or the potential, the floor falls out for Travis Hunter, it is that Trevor Lawrence isn't who we think he is. Even with Liam Cohen, the only way where I don't think that, Travis Hunter can sneak into the top 30 by year's end, just because I think Liam Cohen's system can't support that. But that reality gets really bleak if Trevor Lawrence still continues to struggle in this offense. On paper, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter feel like Diet, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens. Does that make sense in terms of ADP? Because
I'm following.
Utilization is definitely not the same, but you can draw some kind of comparisons to between the offenses where it's offensive line play is just kind of a question mark here. Run game, question mark. Not to say that that's your reason then for being in on Travis Hunter, but if you have confidence in two playmakers, and elite talents at wide receiver, I'm trying to draw as many why shouldn't you be in on Travis Hunter arguments, because you can really simplify it as talent alone. That really should be the reason why you're in.
I feel like at the end of the day, it comes down to a philosophy of fantasy football players of, are you shooting to play for first place, or are you shooting to play to not lose in your league? And I get it. Travis Hunter is probably a higher risk piece, but I think he could offer such a reward that for me, looking at him in the range of Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, this is a range of wide receivers I don't mind throwing a bunch of different darts at, but to me, I'm just bullish on the talent and the role that I could see Travis Hunter playing in this offense. So he could just burst past his projection and give me a top 20 finish this year. And I'll be well, yeah, I should have seen that coming instead of having him ranked all the way down at the wide receiver 35. I should have been more bullish than I already am. I get why people probably don't want to draft Travis Hunter and would rather take a Calvin Ridley instead. I get it. For me, I've definitely changed my philosophy over the past few years of, I don't always want to just play for floor and make sure I don't lose on a given week. I want to play to crush my league mates, and I want to hit home runs as often as I can to make sure I get first place. That's how my philosophy has kind of changed. And I think Travis Hunter is the manifestation of that mentality for me. Alrighty, fellas, that's all we've got on the books for today. 6 wide receivers that you should be drafting before they break out this year. If you haven't heard, we're up to 3 shows a week now, all through August. Going into the season, we're up to 3 shows a week as well. Mock drafts on Mondays for you all. I almost said BBM streams. Best Ball Mania 6 streams on Wednesday. Come hang out, get your reps in because the season is coming quick. Before you know it, you're going to be drafting against your league mates for glory this year. Next week, 7 running backs. Your league mates are drafting terribly wrong. That's one you're going to want to tune in for. You don't want to send that one to your league mates. Maybe send it to a buddy in a different league so you can help them out. But hope that your league mates don't watch that video because they're screwing up. And then it's league winners and league losers week, fellas. 2 topics we love talking about around here. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well so you know when all of that content comes out. If you want even more, FF Fellas over on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. All of that is exclusive content. It's not just chopped up versions of our episodes here. It is exclusive content that we don't post on this channel, on this podcast feed. If you're watching on YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts, if you want to remain loyal to the red play button app. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Tyler_Plath for Ty, Camlaw, FFF, Cameron. Not sure why I flipped you 2 this week, but I did. We're cruising through. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
Deuces.